evening, all of you, and welcome to yet another session on rapid revision for XAT. I'm Ganeshan. I'm going to walk you through a quick rapid revision session on XAT 2025. I'm sure some of you might have watched my earlier videos also. So I would like to quickly throw light on certain very important aspects that I covered in the previous sessions also. Right? So a quick recap. Number one, XAT is different from CAT, and therefore accuracy counts more than anything else. Keep this in mind. Okay. Number two, you'll always find questions that can be solved. Keep a close watch on the questions that can be solved and solve them accurately. This is point number two. In today's session, what we are going to essentially focus on is elimination techniques and strategies. In the final roundup, that's the idea, right? So in the first session, I focused on how to identify easy questions. In the second one, we focused on uh, how to solve questions based on poems by and large and critical reasoning. In today's session, we are going to do a thorough roundup on how to eliminate options by and large, do a quick revision based on that. Okay, so now let's get going. Okay, I'm going to show you the questions. Right. I'm going to show you the questions and then let's solve the questions one by one um, and then um, evaluate the options, analyze them closely, and look at how we can eliminate the options. Okay, well, so here comes the first question. So this is a critical reasoning question. Take your own time to solve this question. Once you're done, I'll analyze this question. Okay, now let's look at this question. Read the following statements. It says, the criminal law bills. The criminal law bills are said to decolonize Indian criminal law, but actually intensify colonial style parts. Okay. If the bills intensify, if the bills intensify colonial style parts, they should be revised. Fine. There is a suggestion. We should implement new laws if they fail to decolonize the criminal law system. Okay, so well, these are the statements given to us. Let's take a close look on what the question is asking us to do. If the above statements are true, which means we'll need to consider that all of these statements are true. Okay, if the above statements are true, hmm, which one of the following must also be true? Must also be true. Okay, so well, this is a straightforward question of critical reasoning. First of all, we have to assume all the statements given here to be true. That's number one. And number two, uh, whichever option go beyond what is stated in the statements or these lines should be promptly eliminated. Okay. So, well, all the main point here is uh, the criminal law um, bills are said to decolonize criminal law. But then the point is we should implement new laws if they fail to decolonize, right? So this is the main point here is this one, right? We should implement new laws if they fail to decolonize the criminal law system. Now let's look at the first option, okay? If the criminal law bills are revised, they will no longer intensify they will no longer intensify colonial style powers. Now, do we actually know this? Based on these statements, can we say this? We cannot. So, well, uh, even if these statements are true, we cannot say this must also be true. Why? Because this prediction may not hold true, right? We do not have any guarantee or certainty regarding whether the new criminal law bills will intensify colonial style powers or not. We do not know about the consequences or results and therefore eliminated. So option A will therefore be clearly eliminated, need not necessarily be true. The criminal law bills should be revised only if, okay, fine, let me outline this, only if they are not effective in decolonizing the criminal law system. Okay, should be revised. So it seems to be a suggestion. Okay. So it's quite close to the suggestion given in the paragraph. So, well, I can say it's at least close to the main point given in the paragraph. I mean, we should implement new laws if they fail to decolonize. It's close to the idea saying the criminal laws should be revised only if they are not effective in decolonizing. So if they fail, is very close to this, and therefore B must be true in a way, like it's very clearly connected with the last sentence. Okay, fine. Implementing new laws is necessary if the criminal law bills are revised. We do not know whether they are implementing new laws is necessary. So this conditionality is totally missing in the main paragraph, right? If the criminal law bills are revised, implementing new laws is necessary. So it's not based on this conditionality, okay? So this also out of scope, doesn't come from the paragraph. So clearly out of scope, therefore eliminated, okay? The criminal law bills should not be revised if they do not intensify. Now this states the opposite of this, right? So what passage essentially states is the criminal law bills should be revised if they intensify, right? If they fail to decolonize, if they fail to decolonize. Okay. So here it says the criminal law bills should not be revised if they, I mean, it's stating the opposite. So, well, when the positive premises are given, they may not apply to the inversions. Okay, so उल्टा सही हो जरूरी नहीं, right? In fact, उल्टा सही होता भी नहीं है. So the idea is this: since this states the opposite, right? The criminal law bills should not be revised if they do not intensify colonial style powers. The passage simply states, these lines simply state what criminal law bills should do, what they should incorporate, under what conditions they should not be revised is not stated, right? It simply states the conditions in which, or the condition that should be met in order to revise the bill. Okay, so should not be revised. So it states the opposites. Therefore, this can also be quickly eliminated. That's the idea, right? So stay on guard when opposite is stated or a negative statement is stated, right? So it needs to be quickly reconciled, right? So we should. That's the idea here. If the criminal law bills are popular, again, it's totally out of scope. They do not need to be revised. So it doesn't talk about popularity at all. So let's eliminate this also. We are left with only one option that exactly reconciles with this important point in the statement. I mean, we should implement the new laws if they fail to decolonize. It's very close to this idea. The criminal law bill should be revised only if they're not effective in decolonizing the criminal law system. That's about it, right? I hope you have understood this. Not a very difficult question. That's about it. Okay. Now, pay attention to this question, solve this before I analyze it. Okay, let's see how you can solve this question. Uh, the United Nations report titled Broken Record highlights the failure of global efforts to sufficiently reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Fine. Despite commitments to net zero emissions, the report deems. So there's some report being referred to here. The definite article tells us that there is some report being referred to here. So probably before this sentence, the introduction of the report should come. Okay. The Paris Agreement aimed to limit temperature rise to below 2 degree, preferably 1.5 degrees centigrade compared to pre-industrial levels. So this talks about, there has been some agreement to reduce the global emissions, it seems. So, well, 3 tells you that the global emissions were supposed to be reduced. So 3 tells you that the global emissions were supposed to be reduced, and this was uh, agreed upon under Paris Agreement. This was mutually agreed in the Paris Agreement. There was a goal set. Okay. The report acknowledges. Now, this is the report. This is the agreement. These are two different things, right? So it seems the reports basically evaluating what happened in the agreement. Yes or no? There was an agreement to reduce the global emissions, and then probably a report came. Okay. So how many sentences talk about reports? So here it is. Right here they are, in fact. One talks about the report. Okay. Two again talks about the report. Four also talks about the report. So one, two, and four talks about the report. It emphasizes the urgent need for the wealthiest and historically the most responsible countries to commit to greater and faster emission reduction. Probably this also talks about the report. Basically, there's only one sentence that doesn't talk about the report. What does the report do essentially, right? think about it, because only one very important thing out here: identification of opening sentence. Okay. And remember that the identification of opening sentence, in a way, depends upon your understanding of other sentences. So by looking at the five sentences, you can say there is only one sentence that brings up the idea of reducing the goal of reducing global emissions. The other sentences in the form of the report analysis or the presentation of the report tell us uh, how this the goal of this agreement is being evaluated, yes or no, which means this should be the opening sentence, right? So all the other sentences that talk about the report aim at evaluating this goal presented in the Paris Agreement, represented in the Paris Agreement. Okay, fine. So basically, we are going to start with three, yes or no? And since you're going to start with three, you've got only two options here. You're going to compare A and D. So that brings you to two options quickly. That is how you should go about it. Now, what you're left with to analyze is 3-1 or 3-4. Huh? That's the next step. 3-1 or 3-4. Let's look at this. The Paris Agreement aimed to limit temperature rise to below 2. Now you can very clearly see that the report here and the other sentences that talk about the report should have an antecedent, and one is the only sentence that names or and introduces the report, which means this should be the first sentence that brings the report into picture, yes or no, which means 3 should be followed by 1, not by 4. This much is very clear. Now we are sort of almost sure that the answer should be B. Just to cross check other links also, right? Let's see now. 2, despite commitments to the non-zero emissions, the report deems again these promises, and very clearly it says the report acknowledges some progress since, right, Paris Agreement. So with a projected increase in, okay, fine. So very clearly you can see that 3-1-2 is a natural progression. 3-4-1 doesn't make sense at all, right? 3-4-1. One talks about the United Nations report. 4 brings report into picture first, and then the introduction of the report. So this actually inverts the logic, right? And therefore inverts the sequence, doesn't make sense at all. Huh? It's not logically correct. 4-1 is not. 4-1 actually makes it just the opposite of what it should be, right? So basically, the correct answer therefore is B. So since the options are given to you, you can quickly zero in on the correct option. 4-1 cannot be the correct sequence. You're any which ways comparing, you're comparing B and D. I'm sorry, I wrote A versus D. It is B versus D. You're comparing B versus D. So basically you're comparing, can it be 4-1? It cannot be 4-1. So my correct answer is B. As simple as that, right? I hope you've understood. Okay. Mark this. I wrote A here. It's basically B versus D, not A versus D. Okay. I hope you've understood this. Right. Right. So see, in the chat box, I can see A versus E is what you're trying to compare, right? The whole paragraph is not about the report. The reports actually analyze what the aim in Paris Agreement was to reduce the global emissions and all, and whether those aims were met or not. That is why 3 should be the opening sentence, not 1. So that is why you will not compare A and E. You should compare B and D. I hope this point is very clearly made. Understood? Sure. Great. ठीक है, तो हमेशा पैराजम्बल सॉल्व करते समय सेंटेंसेस के आपस के रिलेशनशिप को समझना जरूरी है. दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. Okay, now solve the next question. Okay. I have already, uh, I mean, emphasized the point that today we are going to focus on elimination. Okay. So now let's look at the question stem very carefully, because the first thing that you need to keep in mind while eliminating the option, not able to figure out, okay, Muhammad, correct? Your name is Muhammad. Uh, After that, I cannot exactly read. Muhammad Osama, I think it is, right? Okay. 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 See, I'll tell you what. What is the primary issue? In order to eliminate the options properly, the first thing that you need to figure out is, I mean, you need to pay close attention to is the question stem. Okay. The primary issue. What's the primary issue in this paragraph is what is being asked, highlighted by the author regarding the generational conflict. So, to identify the primary issue, I think we should read this portion very carefully. The one which I have marked on the screen that you can see. Hmm? The retort. Basically, the sarcastic phrase is being referred to in the retort. Retort is like to talk back, to back answer, उल्टा जवाब देना. So इस उल्टे जवाब की क्या खास बात थी? Is the point. समझ रहे हैं? The retort captured the yawning divide between the generations, seemingly every issue. I mean, this is the crux of the matter, right? This is the crux of the matter. So it is not a very small issue related to generation gap is identified here. No. In fact, this very clearly identifies the yawning divide. Yawning divide means there is like it's a huge gap in thoughts and perceptions of the people of the younger generations and the older generations. And in practically all walks of life and all spheres. Right? बात ये हो रही है और उसका कॉन्सिक्वेंस क्या हो रहा है? ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट हो सकता है, टीम परफॉर्मेंस में प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है. सो दैट्स द काइंड ऑफ थिंग लाइक एंड अ लैक ऑफ अवेयरनेस एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग can drive discrimination in hiring promotion. So this can also be a consequence. Now, should we focus on the specific part of this issue or the broader issue? What do you think? When the question is the primary issue, you should, broadly speaking, you should look for an option that captures the main issue or one part of the issue. What should you look for? है ना? आपको एक मेन इशू वाला प्राइमरी इशू देखना चाहिए ना. प्राइमरी वर्ड का मतलब क्या होता है? मुद्दे की बात क्या है? ठीक है. तो उसमें अगर एक स्पेसिफिक पार्ट एड्रेस हुआ लेकिन मुद्दा छूट गया पूरा, then that cannot be the answer. Do you understand my point? So let's look at the options now. The global spread of the phrase okay boomer as a symbol of no, the global spread is not the matter here. Basically, the difference that exists between the generation, that's the cause for concern. Now that is the main issue here. Yes or no? That's the main issue. So this is the global spread is not the issue. Therefore, you can very easily eliminate the option A, yes or no. Option A is gone. The impact of generational conflict on workplace collaboration and team performance. Okay, this can be the correct option. So let's place a question mark. And unless we find a better option than this, okay, we will settle for this. If we find a better option, then we will eliminate this. The differences in political activism and social media use, again, political activism and social media use. Again, it identifies a very specific part of the differences between the generations. I mean, the old and the new generations. Okay, so it's too specific, yes or no? It doesn't identify the main issue. Okay, so B identifies the main issue. C is very specific, okay, and therefore narrow. I'm using the word narrow, and that's why this can also be safely eliminated. Okay, so C is also eliminated. Let us look at D. The risk of lawsuits due to discrimination in hiring and promotion based on age. Come on, this also has the same fallacy. Fallacy समझते हैं क्या होता है? लॉजिकल फ्लॉ. इस ऑप्शन में भी वही लॉजिकल फ्लॉ है. प्राइमरी इशू पूछ रहा है, लेकिन उस इशू के जो छोटे छोटे टुकड़े हैं, स्मॉल पार्ट्स आर बीइंग हाइलाइटेड इन द ऑप्शंस. यस और नो? This also has the same fallacy. So for the reasons you eliminated C, you should also eliminate option D. Simple as that. The challenge of having five different generations, again, it's totally out of scope. Five different challenge of having five different generations. इसका तो कोई तुक ही नहीं बन रहा, doesn't make sense. And therefore, you're left with only one option. The correct option is B. Makes sense? I got a feedback saying I'm not able to solve the question, not able to make out. I hope now you have been able to understand the question very clearly. Yes. So send me a message, yes, if you have been able to understand the question clearly. If there is any doubt, let me know. In the chat box, I'll be happy to address. ठीक है, कोई भी किसी भी तरह का डाउट आपको आ रहा हो आप पूछिएगा. ठीक है, I'll address your queries. ठीक है, समझ आ गई बात. Let us move on to the next question now. Okay, you are asking a doubt regarding the about the previous question. I'll go back to that question. Right, Saif has asked a question regarding the uh, asked a doubt regarding the previous question. I have gone back to that slide. Okay, the global spread of the phrase "Okay, Boomer." First of all, uh, I cannot say we cannot say that A is more generalized. Okay, actually, with respect to the information given in the passage, the broader information, the broader part of the information is this: yawning divide between the generations. Okay, yawning divide between the generations is the broader aspect. तो उस point of view से just think about it. Huh? The global spread of this phrase, okay, boomer. So don't you think this option specifically focuses on the phrase, while the broader aspect is the retort captured in the yawning divide between the generations? So the main idea here is the yawning divide between the generations, the generational gap and the problems that ensue, that follow from the generational gap. Do you understand the point very clearly? So, to the contrary, what you have asked, I'm specifically telling you, this okay boomer, the spread of the phrase okay boomer is a very specific start to the passage. And then the idea is carried further and comes to the main point here, yawning divide between generations. And that creates all the problem mentioned. Okay. So this is not generalized. It's too specific to be the correct answer and identifies only one aspect of the passage. It starts with it. It's incomplete. Okay. Okay. Any other question if you have, let me know. So I think now we should move to the next question. Okay. I'm really happy to see that you're asking questions. It's very, very important to ask whatever questions you have in your mind. That is how your preparation will become better and fine-tuned before the exam. Should I start analyzing the question or wait for some more time? What should I do? Should I start analyzing the question or should I wait for some more time? Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you. Okay. I'm sure you have read the question and have made an attempt to solve the question. Now let us look at the question carefully. Remember, whenever you solve a typical critical reasoning question, the paragraph given to you is generally speaking divided into two parts, the conclusion and the evidence or the evidences supporting the conclusion. Correct? Correct. So that's what uh, the scheme of things is as far as this paragraph is concerned. ठीक है इसमें भी दो parts हैं जैसे यहां से this portion, and in such cases you should mentally start with the conclusion, although you will carefully read the entire paragraph, commonsensically try to understand it, all that you should do. Then how should you structure it in your mind? How should you mentally map it? That is my point. Okay, how should you do it? This is the conclusion. Okay, this is the conclusion. Huh? Therefore it can be concluded that malaria, particularly in regions like Southeast Asia, continues to be a significant health concern, demanding sustained efforts and innovative strategies for effective management and control. Okay, this is the conclusion. Now it becomes important for us to figure out and understand how and on what basis is the author saying this, right? What is the basis for arriving at this conclusion? And that basis is what we call the premise. उस बेसिस को हम क्या बोलते हैं? Premise या premises हो सकती हैं. Okay, so on what premise, on the basis of the premise or the premises, the author has arrived at this conclusion. तो हमको connection देखना है between the premise and the conclusion, premise, premises, and the conclusion, in order to identify which of these statements most seriously weakens the conclusion drawn above. To identify this, we need to understand the connection between the premise and the conclusion. Okay, so let's understand the paragraph first. Let us understand the structure of the argument first. In 2022, the uh, World, World Health Organization's World Malaria Report highlighted India's significant contribution to malaria Southeast Asia. समझ आ गया? So it seems 66% of the total, right? So it seems Southeast Asia, Southeast Asia का जो contribution था to the global malaria occurrences or the frequency, it was 2% of the total malaria cases. 2% contribution came from this region. So this region is basically the Southeast Asia. 2% of the global malaria cases. From India again, okay, India was 66% of this 2%. India was 66% of this 2%. This is the kind of thing, picture. Despite advancements in prevention, the number of malaria cases globally has risen with an estimated surpassing pre-pandemic levels. So, preventive measures and all checks and balances are in place, despite which the global malaria cases have risen in number. ये इसने यहाँ बता दिया. Okay, fine. This increase, this is the most important sentence in the paragraph. Pay close attention to this. This increase, particularly in a region where significant progress has been made, underscores means highlights the complex and persistent nature of the malaria challenge. What does this mean? The author is saying that, uh, like the challenges are being properly addressed, and despite the decrease, despite the decrease in the number of malaria cases in a place, in fact, let us say Southeast Asia in this case, the number of cases has gone down. Ideally speaking, um, uh, the global number of cases should also have come down, but that has not happened. So, despite the control achieved in Southeast Asia, the author observes कि यार Southeast Asia में तो कंट्रोल आ गया नंबर ऑफ केसेस में, लेकिन ग्लोबल लेवल पे तो ये बढ़ गया। हाँ या ना? बढ़ गया कि नहीं? हम भी होते तो क्या सोचते यार ये कैसे हो गया? Yes or no? That's the point. Okay. So that's exactly what's happened here also. Therefore, it can be concluded that malaria, particularly in regions like Southeast Asia, continues to be a significant health concern. So what he's saying is, despite uh, you know a fall in the number of the cases, huh, we still see that globally malaria remains to be a big concern. इसका मतलब अभी भी साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में प्रॉपरली इस प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस नहीं किया जा रहा है, मैं ये दावे से कह सकता हूँ। दैट्स व्हाट इज सेइंग, राइट? एक तरह से कंटिन्यूज टू बी सिग्निफिकेंट हेल्थ केयर, डिमांडिंग सस्टेन्ड एफर्ट्स, innovative strategies for effective management. Basically, he's saying that um, this disease is not effectively controlled in Southeast Asia. क्योंकि भाई नहीं तो क्या होता, यहाँ कम हो जाता तो ग्लोबल लेवल पे भी कम होना चाहिए था, लेकिन ऐसा हुआ नहीं। देखो, ओके, सो देयर यू आर। So let us identify this point very clearly. The number of malaria cases globally risen. ये बड़ा मेन इंपॉर्टेंट मुद्दा आ गया यहाँ पे। अब जरा देखते हैं ऑप्शंस को। क्रिटिकल रीजनिंग क्वेश्चंस को जब भी सॉल्व करते हो मन में मेंटल मैपिंग आपने कर ली एक बार, then you should evaluate the options. Okay. The increase in global malaria cases is partly attributed. Okay. The increase in global malaria cases is partly attributed to enhanced surveillance and reporting mechanisms leading to more accurate case detections. क्या मतलब है इसका मुझे बताओ, right? What does it mean? That statistically जो ये जो uh, अपना प्रेमिस का सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट क्या है, ये क्यों बोल रहा है, इसको कंसर्न क्यों आ गया है कि यार एक तरह से देखा जाए तो ग्लोबल केसेस तो बढ़ रहे हैं, हालांकि साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में तो कम हो गया, लेकिन ग्लोबल केसेस तो बढ़ रहे हैं। इसका मतलब प्रॉब्लम साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में अभी भी बनी हुई है। अगर कोई ऑप्शन ये साबित करता है कि ये जो ग्लोबल केसेस बढ़े हैं, ठीक है, उसका रीजन कुछ और है, तो क्या होगा जरा सोच के देखिए, वीकन करेगा या ना करेगा? विल इट वीकन और नॉट? there is a possible reason why the global cases might have risen other than the one identified by the author. क्योंकि author ने उसको किससे जोड़ लिया? Author has connected it with the Southeast Asia thing. कि despite the fall in cases in the number of cases in Southeast Asia, globally केस बढ़ गया, इसका मतलब साउथ ईस्ट एशिया को दोषी ठहरा रहा है, अभी भी प्रॉब्लम है। लेकिन ये जो ग्लोबल इंक्रीज आपने देखा है, उसका ही अगर रीजन दूसरा हो गया, तो ऑथर का जो मेन कनेक्शन बना रहा है बिटवीन द साउथ ईस्ट एशिया सिचुएशन एंड द ग्लोबल इंक्रीज, वो कनेक्शन टूट जाएगा। हाँ या ना? चूंकि ये ऑप्शन सीधा उस कनेक्शन को तोड़ रहा है, दिस कैन बी अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग ऑप्शन फॉर व्हाई ऑथर्स लाइन ऑफ रीजनिंग गेट्स वीकेंड। क्योंकि उसकी लाइन ऑफ रीजनिंग एक इंपॉर्टेंट चीज पे टिकी हुई है। वो क्या है? मलेरिया केसेस ग्लोबली बढ़ गए हैं, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में कम तो होता हुआ दिख रहा है, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम तो बरकरार है। लेकिन ये ऑप्शन तो बता रहा है कि ये जो बड़े हुए दिख रहे हैं ना स्टैटिस्टिकली, वो बेटर सर्वेलेंस और रिपोर्टिंग मैकेनिज्म से हो रहा है, ना कि किसी प्रॉब्लम की वजह से हो रहा है। तो ये तो बिल्कुल डायरेक्ट अटैक कर दिया ऑथर के प्रेमिस पे। समझ आ रहा है? तो जब भी यूजुअली व्हेन the strengthening or weakening questions are there, द प्रेमिस इज स्ट्रेंथेंड और वीकेंड, या तो स्टेटेड प्रेमिस वीकन होगा या अजम्पशन वीकन होगा। इस केस में अजम्पशन वीकन हुआ है क्योंकि ऑथर एज्यूम कर रहा है कि इन कनेक्शन ग्लोबल इंक्रीज और साउथ ईस्ट एशिया के मतलब साउथ ईस्ट एशिया का लैक ऑफ कंट्रोल हैज रिजल्टेड इन द इंक्रीज इन द मलेरिया केसेस ग्लोबली। वो इन दोनों में एक लिंक अज्यूम करके चल रहा है, लेकिन उस लिंक को तोड़ने वाला ऑप्शन इज ऑप्शन नंबर ए। आई होप you have understood it this very clearly. Okay, now let's come get down to option B now. Recent studies have shown that the immunity levels in the population of Southeast Asia have improved. Now this talks about immunity levels, totally out of scope. इससे कुछ ऑथर जो स्टेटिस्टिकल एविडेंस लेके आ रहा है अपने सामने, उसका लेना देना कुछ है ही नहीं इससे। सो इट इज टोटली आउट ऑफ स्कोप, यस और नो, एंड देयरफॉर दिस कैन बी क्विकली एलिमिनेटेड। तो इसको तो हटा ही दो आप। द राइज इन मलेरिया केसेस कोइंसाइड्स विद इंक्रीज्ड अर्बनाइजेशन एंड पॉपुलेशन मूवमेंट which are known to affect malaria transmission dynamics. Okay, the rise in malaria cases. लेकिन ये कहाँ के मलेरिया केसेस की बात कर रहा है? ओके, obviously maybe so I think you can compare A and C. Okay, compare A and C coincides with increased urbanization and population movement which are known to affect malaria transmission dynamics. लेकिन पता है इसमें क्या हो रहा है? इसमें ये हो रहा है कि अभी भी uh, हो सकता है कि प्रॉब्लम जो ऑथर बोल रहा है वो सही हो, बिकॉज दिस इज नॉट अ स्टेटिस्टिकल इम्पैक्ट। ये बहुत ही क्लियरली एक स्टेटिस्टिकल इम्पैक्ट है। रिपोर्टिंग मैकेनिज्म, सर्वेलेंस, इससे फर्क पड़ गया ग्लोबल, तो केस डिटेक्शन बढ़ गया। तो केस डिटेक्शन बढ़ने का रीजन जो है यहाँ पे स्टेटिस्टिकल नेचर का है, लेकिन यहाँ पे तो हो सकता है कि राइज जेन्युइन हो जो उसने एनालाइज किया, तो ऑथर की बात अभी भी इससे भी सही हो सकती है। तो ए और सी को भी कंपेयर करो, ये स्टेटिस्टिकली इंडिकेट कर रहा है कि यार जो बड़ा हुआ दिख रहा है उसका रीजन सर्वेलेंस है, लेकिन ये फिर भी बता रहा है जो बड़ा हुआ दिख रहा है वो सही भी हो सकता है। इवन इफ आई फैक्टर इन इंक्रीज अर्बनाइजेशन एंड पॉपुलेशन मूवमेंट, वो राइज फिर भी हो सकता है सही हो, है कि नहीं? सही हो मतलब स्टैटिस्टिकल नेचर का तो नहीं है एटलीस्ट। ठीक है, सो इंक्रीज अर्बनाइजेशन से भी हुआ तो अभी समस्या तो है, तो इसलिए ये भी एलिमिनेट हो गया। समझ रहे हैं आप? ये उसके और आर्ग्यूमेंट को वीकन तो नहीं कर पा रहा है। There has been a significant improvement in the treatment protocols for malaria leading to decrease in malaria। अब बात समझो आप, मोर्टेलिटी रेट्स की बात ही नहीं हो रही है, कितने लोग मर रहे हैं मलेरिया से, इसकी बात नहीं हो रही है पैराग्राफ में। पैराग्राफ में ऑथर बात कर रहा है द कनेक्शन ऑफ द solution to malaria problem and the connection between साउथ ईस्ट एशिया, किस तरह से वो इस प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व कर रहे हैं, एंड द ओवरऑल रिडक्शन इन द number of patients suffering from malaria at a global level। ये चीज हो गई समझ में? So the distribution of insecticide treated, I mean, this is too narrow and solely focusing on the preventive measure, you can easily eliminate। आपको खुद ही समझ आ रहा होगा ये तो, right? And therefore the correct option is A। Any doubt, let me know on the chat box। ठीक है, आगे बढ़ जाएं, आगे बढ़ जाएं। ओके, ग्रेट। Solve the next question, question number 5। As I've always been telling you, by and large, there are always questions that can be solved very quickly, provided you have a decent grasp of um, a decent command of grammar and vocabulary. Okay, let's take a quick look. The US Department of Justice's indictment. This is perfectly fine. There is no problem with this sentence. Okay. Indictment. I mean, up to this part, there is no problem. Against an Indian national is directed by, right? Is directed by an Indian. Okay, let's read the next sentence. Nikhil Gupta, involved in the plot, communicated with a senior Indian government's intelligence officer. So it's very clear from the statements that something that has already happened or taken place is being reported. Yes or no? So ideally speaking, all the sentences reporting the incident to us should be in simple past tense. So how many sentences are doing that? Let's figure them out. Number two, this is the one. So this is correct. No problem with this sentence. Yes or no? Okay. Two US based men allegedly engaged to kill Mr. Panoon were working for US law enforcement. No problem with this either. Okay, this is also in simple past. So, ideally speaking, if you look at the sentence number one now, the US Department of Justice's indictment against an Indian national is directed by an Indian government official. It was directed. This is also a sentence that's reporting to you as to what exactly happened. Yes or no? So this should be was directed, not is directed. So because you have to match it with two and three. I hope you've understood this, right? So, right. C, yes, C, we can look at it. Hmm? Because two, what is wrong with two? First of all, we need to figure it out. Because if you say C is the correct answer, there should be some mistake both in two and three. So when you find an option here also, you can go by elimination. If my answer is two or three both, then what's the mistake in two and three? Let's look at two. Nikhil Gupta, involved in the plot, communicated with a senior Indian government intelligence officer. There's nothing wrong in two. टू में तो पक्का कोई गलती है ही नहीं. And therefore, ulta, I can say whichever option has two in it cannot be the correct answer because the question is asking me to identify the incorrect statements, which means both the statements given in the option should be incorrect. एक भी सही हुआ तो वो आंसर नहीं होगा. Even if one sentence is correct, it cannot be the correct answer. Yes or no? I mean, this can make your elimination strategy better, right? So let's look at two and three. Sentences two and three. Which one are you sure of? Just think about it. Which one are you sure of? मतलब किसी भी sentence पे आप surety रख सकते हैं. तो which of these sentences can you be sure of? Nikhil Gupta, involved in the plot, communicated with a senior Indian government intelligence officer. I'm sure I'm in fact, I assume here with confidence that as regards sentence two, you are at least sure that this sentence has no mistake. Yes or no? If you're sure of that, how many options can be safely eliminated? This can be eliminated. This can be eliminated. How many options remain? B, D, and E? Yes or no? If B, D, and E are the options, um, well, there are two. Five is common here, four is common here. Okay, A and C have already eliminated. Okay, so let us read 4 and 5 in that case. Okay, so let's read 5. If the Indian government authorized targeting Sikh separatists, it implies a change in policy. This is very clearly correct sentence. समझ आ रहा है? You either identify the incorrect sentences or sentence or the correct sentences. जो भी आसान लगे. तो मेरे हिसाब से if you go this way would be better while solving this question. Two is and 2 and 5 are definitely correct. 2 and 5 are definitely correct. Now let's say, even if we have a doubt in other sentences, you can still solve the question. Okay, 2 and 5 are definitely correct. How many options have either 2 or 5? Let us see. So this has 2, cannot be the correct answer. This has 2, cannot be the correct answer. These two sentences have 5, cannot be the correct answer. Therefore, my answer is 1 and 4. Finished. समझ आया? So even if the question asks you to identify incorrect sentences, I can solve the question by finding the correct sentences and then apply the elimination logic accordingly. Did you understand the point very clearly? Now let me tell you what the concept here is. Okay. First of all, this should be was, not is. So this is wrong. Point number one. Let's look at four now. Okay. Because this doesn't match with two and three. नरेशन है तो नरेशन का ही पार्ट है ये इंडाइटमेंट जो हुआ है ठीक है सो द यूएस डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ जस्टिस इंडाइटमेंट इंडाइटमेंट मतलब जो इसके खिलाफ जो आई मीन ही हैज बीन इनकल्पेटेड बेसिकली जो इसके ऊपर ब्लेम फिक्स हुआ है उसकी बात हो रही है अगेंस्ट सो ऑलरेडी हो चुका है ना तो ब्लेम फिक्स ठीक है सो बेसिकली रिपोर्टिंग ऑफ व्हाट ऑलरेडी व्हाट हैड ऑलरेडी हैपेंड तो ये तो सिंपल पास्ट में होना चाहिए जैसे ये टू और थ्री है तो लेकिन ये सिंपल प्रेजेंट में लिखा हुआ है ये तो पक्का ही गलत हो गया फोर्थ में आते हैं मीटिंग्स बिटवीन यूएस प्रेसिडेंट जो बाइडेन एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी हैव अकर्ड सिंस द इन्वेस्टिगेशन सिंस द इन्वेस्टिगेशन नहीं होगा सोच के देखो सिंस द बिगिनिंग ऑफ द इन्वेस्टिगेशन सिंस द बिगिनिंग ऑफ द इन्वेस्टिगेशन ओके since the investigation is incomplete. Since the investigation is incomplete. Because since refers to a point of time. Investigation doesn't refer to a point of time. Beginning refers to a point of time. This is the grammar nuance here. I hope you have understood this very clearly. बात समझ आ गई लेकिन इतना सोचने की जरूरत नहीं थी अगर आप had you come the other way around, right? Identified the correct sentences. Even then, you could have identified the correct option. Clear है? Okay. Okay, this is one of such questions I'm sure you'll come across, even in the actual question paper, which you can solve very fast. Okay, so let's look at the options now. Which of the following will be the most meaningful conclusion of the passage? Conclusion means something that can be arrived at beyond certain doubt. Okay, inference may you can stretch a bit, but when it comes to a conclusion, it should be more definitive. Okay. Um, Despite now, what does it say? I mean, it's a very humorous passage. I'm sure those who could sense it would have laughed towards the end, towards the end of the passage. When you read this, everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Or more humorously, the good news is that there is a baseball in heaven. The bad news is that you are pitching on Thursday. So if you know when you're going to die, you'll go crazy, is what the author is telling us. Okay. So, but then let's look at the options and then let's go back to the paragraph also. The fear of death is universal. Question mark. Regardless of one's belief about the afterlife. And can this be the meaningful conclusion from the paragraph? Okay, let's look at the paragraph first. Despite my certainty that there is no, my certainty. First of all, observe that this is a first person narration. My मतलब first person होता है, author first person narration का ये passage हो गया. That there is no afterlife. I don't fear death itself, as I don't find the prospect of unconsciousness to be terrifying. I have also maintained that the humanist's consolation in the face of death is upheld by leaving memories behind through the lives we touch. But this doesn't quite cover the range of emotions that a committed atheist feels about dying. See, since it is in the first person narration and the author refers to an atheist, it's quite obvious that the author himself is the atheist. Okay, that's the reference here. That being the case, when he says, I don't fear, the passage is definitely related to the atheist's mindset. इतना तो क्लियर हो गया. तो ये ऐसा कोई पैसेज नहीं जो जनरली फियर ऑफ डेथ के बारे में बात कर रहा हो, नहीं. ये एथीस्ट का जो पर्सपेक्टिव होता है रिलेटेड टू द फियर ऑफ डेथ, that is being talked about and addressed here. Clear? Right. Once you understand this, how easy it is going to be to eliminate the options. This cannot be the option. Quite general and broad, doesn't bring in the atheist perspective into picture. A is gone. Okay, A is gone. Look at B. Atheists, while not fearing death, struggle with the concept of non-existence. Right. This is the only option, you know. B is the only option, huh, that talks about atheist, while not fearing death, struggle with the concept of non-existence. This is clearly there. I don't fear, but I still don't want to die. It's very clearly there. So this can be the correct option. Leaving a legacy throughout again, it's not there. Doesn't talk about atheist. The emotions surrounding death are complex again. Doesn't talk about atheists and how they struggle with it. That's the main idea here. So none of the other options actually talk about atheists. So very quickly they can be eliminated, right? The correct choice, therefore, is B. I hope you've very clearly understood this question. Okay. So, I mean, some questions can be quickly solved by categorizing the other options as being totally out of scope. And you can do that very quickly, as was possible in this case. Over to the next question. Okay, as I've already told you, these questions are not very difficult to solve, provided you know the concepts. Okay, she has been suffering from a high fever since last night. ऐसा स्कूल में applications भी हमने बचपन में बहुत लिखे हुए हैं, so it's not difficult to identify that the sentence is correct. So this is correct. Okay, fine. After recovering from the illness, he resumed to his work. Sorry, he resumed his work. This much we know. Even by gut feel, you can mark this, right? He resumed his work, not to his work. They are discussing about the new project. Remember, discussing or discuss as a verb never takes a preposition after that. Why? Because it is a transitive verb. उसके बाद direct object आना चाहिए. So they are discussing the new project. Discussing about the new project is wrong. Although many people use discuss this way, but it is not the correct usage. Okay, so they are discussing the project, not about the new project. This is wrong. Discuss is a transitive verb. What is the concept here? Discuss is a transitive verb. Despite of the, in spite of hota hai, despite the heavy rains is the correct thing. Despite of is wrong. This also you might be knowing by and large. So very clearly, 2 is wrong, 2, 3, and 4, all the three are wrong. He has been living in New York for over a decade, this is evidently correct. The teacher emphasized the importance of, just like discuss, emphasize also that will not take a preposition because again it's a transitive verb. Emphasize the importance of regular study habits, right? So 6 is also wrong. So what are we left with then? Finally, 1 and 5, D is the correct answer. Okay. So, well, that's the advantage of knowing the grammar concepts. You can solve the questions quickly and the accuracy is also guaranteed. Well, I'm sure you have made a conscious attempt to solve this question. Let's look at how we can quickly solve this question. Let's uh, first look at the opening sentence and then let's pair the sentences quickly. Hmm? Now, philosophers fear the kind of sleep that their own works may induce, as their arguments and insights often seem less engaging than simpler forms of entertainment. It's very simply put, means all that it means is like um, you can easily get involved in simpler forms of entertainment. You enjoy it quite spontaneously that way, naturally, in fact. Okay. But when it comes to deep philosophy and all that, if you don't, it's easy to lose connection and therefore it might put you to sleep. And that is a philosopher's fear. That's the meaning of this sentence. देखते हैं. Nisha sarcastically remarked, Blessed. Now, this sarcastically remarked is very important. Blessed are the sleepy. So, this sarcastic remark he has leveled against those who easily fall asleep, huh? Who fall prey to sleep, in fact. Huh? Blessed are the ones. So, blessed does not mean blessed here. Actually, he's taunting. Sleep, for they shall soon drop off and even try to live on minimal sleep. So, number one, he passed a sarcastic remark on the ones who could not control sleep, and he tried his best to live on minimal sleep. So this sentence is basically talking about the philosopher Nietzsche who did this. The continuation of our lives in sleep, where we are reduced to unchosen auto automatisms, is a creepy reminder of our dependence of involvement. Now, this sort of uh, seems to be a sentence that wraps up the entire paragraph because this does not talk about any philosopher or philosophy. Simply talks about how uh, sleep, in a way, reminds us of our mm, dependence on involuntary process. Okay, so this sentence is sort of falls apart from the other sentences. थोड़ा अलग जा रहा है. समझने की बात ये है. यूजुअली जो ऑड वन आउट होता है या अलग जाता है उसको पैराग्राफ के लास्ट में रखा जाता है. It's usually placed in the last position. Sleep is seen as an enemy. Now, sleep is seen as an enemy by those who view philosophy as now. This evidently should be the opening sentence because they'll two very clearly tells us Nisha sarcastically remarked. So he is one of those who view philosophy as cultivating wakefulness, and that is why he lived on minimal sleep. Okay, and sleep is seen as an enemy by those, and the response of one of such philosophers is given here, which means four should come first, and then it should be followed by two. So now you have actually identified a very strong pair here, and none other sentence than, I mean, none other than four can be the opening sentence, the continuation of our life. The paragraph doesn't talk about this. This cannot be the opening sentence. The opening sentence is not about Nishcha's sarcastic remark, so this cannot be the opening sentence. The paragraph is not about the fear, right? The paragraph is basically about uh, sleep being repelled by the philosophers. That's the basic idea, right? So it should start from there, in fact. So very evidently, you compare two options here, B and B and E, in which case you can very clearly see one should not follow four, two should follow four. This sarcastic remark will definitely follow. Has been one of the philosophers who sees sleep as an enemy, and then he levels this sarcastic remark. तो ये sarcastic remark जो आ रहा है उसकी इस थॉट से आ रहा है कि वो स्लीप को एज एन एनिमी देख रहा है. Therefore, 4-2 is a mandatory pair. Correct answer B. Clear है? Any doubt? Let me know. Any doubt? Let me know. Right? I still see. Okay. Solve the next question. There is a vocabulary question coming your way. Carefully read the paragraph, understand the context, and then solve the question. I'm sure you solved this question. See, there are two things that you should be doing while solving such questions. Number one, uh, you should be able to connect the words with the context and very quickly eliminate those options that do not logically connect with the context here. Okay. So ideally speaking, all the words should fit well with the context here. Yes or no? Okay. Since the rise of the militia movement in the 1990s, right-wing extremist groups indigenous to the United States have proven to pose a severe threat to the security and dash of the nation. So security and stability can be correct. Security and stability can be probably correct. Unity can be correct. Stability can be correct. So far, so good. Okay. Harmony can also be correct. But then peace, I don't know. Peace cannot be contextually appropriate here. Cohesion, which means to bind people together. So it doesn't make sense here, right? Security and what else? So basically, security and stability, right wing extremist groups. Okay, so they can spoil what? Unity, stability, and harmony at best. Right. I can quickly arrive at these words. Domestic terrorists commit violent and criminal acts to advance their ideological goals, often of a political, religious, and social, environmental, or dash nature. So it cannot be any of these already identified. So it has to be different from political, religious, social, environmental, or what else? Okay. So, or dash nature, dash nature. So dash nature can be radical nature, correct? Dash nature can be radical nature, yes or no? That is one possibility. Okay, that can be radical nature, or that can also be diverse nature is questionable here, right? Because diverse कैसे होगा? Political, religious, social, environmental तो already diverse हो गया, right? तो और बचा कौन सा नेचर है यहाँ पे? तो डाइवर्स नेचर doesn't mean anything here, right? So it's gone. It can be extreme or radical. It can be extreme or radical. So still it's between A and C. Yes or no? We are still comparing A and C. So that's how you proceed in the exam, right? So unity and harmony. Diverse is gone. In fact, here let's look at the third one now. Um, have in bringing white supremacists with, okay, fine, let's read it up, or dash nature. Since Donald Trump's success in 2016 presidential election, several new extremist organizations have been founded in the United States. So new organizations have come up, bringing white supremacists with dash ideologies together. So new organizations have come up. Now, since many different, in fact, the white supremacists, I mean, they have come together. What does that mean? Huh? They had varied ideologies or ideologies. If ideologies were varied, they cannot come together. Simple as that, right? So it has to be similar here. Yes or no? Varied is gone, right? Underground is gone. Far right is 100% right because the problem is with the right wing militia refusal to acknowledge and read this part. Domestic terrorism is not a new challenge for the United States. However, President Trump and his administration's refusal to acknowledge and condemn right wing militia. So, Donald Trump did not acknowledge the problem related to that's coming from the right wing militia, which means problem. This is the source of the problem. So it will not create, coming from the problem coming from the extremist groups. Obviously, it will come from far right since it is related to ignoring the right wing militia problem. Correct. Simple. So varied and underground evidently eliminated. Similar and far right are evidently correct. Correct option A. This is how, absolutely right. Rishabh, you're absolutely right. A is the correct answer, right? So, I mean, the focus again, as usual, is on the logic of elimination. That's how you go about it. solve the next question now. I hope you have solved this question. Okay. Now, uh, in order to solve the questions that ask you to identify the last sentence or the sentence that appropriately completes the paragraph, you should first read the paragraph carefully and sense the direction in which the thoughts are moving. Okay, let's quickly analyze that. In the digital age, artificial intelligence is transforming the way we interact with technology. AI systems are increasingly being integrated into various sectors, from healthcare diagnostics to personalized learning in education. So basically, the first sentence talks about how AI is spreading into different areas. These advancements promise to revolutionize how we live and work. Okay, fine. A recent study by Gartner predicts that by 2035, AI technologies could be contributing up to 15.7 trillion to the global economy, showcasing the potential impact on both productivity and personal convenience. So you can see it starts from the idea of AI's widespread impact and then converges on to the point of the economic impact. That is how the transition and movement. If I talk about the direction, it starts with the idea of like AI systems are increasingly being integrated into various sectors, and then finally it has created an impact in a way to bring about a big turnaround in the economic aspect. ये तो क्लियर हो गया मतलब इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट की तरफ जाके जुड़ रहा है पॉइंट towards the end of the paragraph here. Now let's look at the options. This economic contribution is mainly attributed to AI's ability to enhance productivity. So this continues on the same note. This talks about the economic aspect and adds one more layer to what has already been discussed. And yes, this can conclude the paragraph also. Yes, so this is a very strong contender. This links up very well with the last sentence. It also connects with the economic contribution, which is highlighted in the last sentence. Not only that, it also connects well with the overall thought process here, which talks about the big economic impact created by AI. However, the integration of AI into various sectors poses significant challenges. This moves in the negative direction. The paragraph does not move in the negative direction, doesn't talk about challenges and all. This can be eliminated, although there is a contrasting, there's a word that contrasts. Doesn't matter because we can very easily make out that the author doesn't want us to understand challenges, impact, etc. Doesn't move in the direction at all. Eliminated. The potential of AI to augment human capabilities is especially significant in sectors where decision making is complex. Now, so yes, this can be a serious distractor, right? Sometimes when we don't read the paragraph carefully, we can mark such options as the correct option. Okay. But then what you should understand is this is clearly out of the scope of the paragraph. Okay. Because it talks about the potential of AI uh, in the ways it can add to the human capabilities and uh, how it can affect the decision making, etc., and where it is significant in when it comes to decision making, not how, in fact, where it is significant when it comes to decision making. So this is something not discussed in the paragraph at all. So this can also be eliminated. So we can see that like B and C are out of scope. Huh? There, in fact, B is contradictory to the flow of the paragraph. C is out of scope. The real test for AI will be in its adaptability. Again, real test is just like the challenge option. Okay, this is also gone. Despite this promising forecast, there's an ongoing debate about ethical implications. Again, doesn't come into picture based on what is written here. Simple. Correct answer is A. I hope this is clear to all of you. Let's move on to the next question. कहीं भी किसी भी तरह का डाउट आ रहा है पूछिए any doubt of any type please ask me. I'll be happy to answer, right? Yeah. Okay. Punctuation may look simple, but let me tell you, it's one of the most complex areas of grammar. Okay. Sometimes here or there you may find a few questions on punctuation, especially in exams like SNAP and XAT. Which one of the following sentences have the correct usage of punctuation? Okay, that is the question. Australia is known for its beautiful beaches and unique wildlife. There is a colon here. Canada for its vast landscapes and friendly people, and Brazil for its vibrant culture and rainforests. This is questionable, right? Do we really need a semicolon here? Semicolon is usually required when there are compartments. There is a list presented. Long clauses are there, and every clause needs a separation by using a semicolon, or there is a contrast, like man proposes, God disposes, right? To err is human, to forgive is divine. When there is a contrast, instead of putting a full stop between these two sentences, it's better to put a semicolon to indicate that there is a relationship of contrast between these two sentences. Okay, so the clauses are long. After every clause, there should be a semicolon, but that is not the case here, right? Australia is known for its beautiful beaches and unique wildlife. Then Canada for its, here there is no contrast and there is no clause separation also, right? And therefore this is not required. Okay. So then let's read the other sentences. Okay. So this is a question mark. Okay. Australia is known for its beautiful beaches and unique wildlife. Now here there is a comma. This is correct. Canada for its vast landscapes and friendly people. Brazil for its vibrant culture and rainforest. So, okay, this can be, but still, there should be an and here, right? There should be an and here, which is missing. Australia is known for its beautiful beaches and unique wildlife. Canada for its vast landscapes, and Brazil for its, again, it's the same problem here also. Here, that problem is removed, yes or no? And whenever in a sentence, conjunction is used, okay, remember, a comma should be placed before the conjunction. Okay, and Brazil for its vibrant culture and rainforest. So now this, the conjunction and is used, and before the conjunction there is a comma. This should be the correct version. Do you understand? So here and is missing. Okay, here also and is missing, and unnecessary use of semicolon is there, right? Actually, comma should be used. No semicolons are required here. So the perfect version is the last sentence here. Option E is the correct answer. Comma, Canada, again there is a comma for its vast landscape and people, and Brazil. Before the conjunction also there should be a comma, right? Correct answer is C. ठीक है, मतलब मैं तो पूरा एक सेशन लेता हूँ पंक्चुएशन पे, ठीक है, तो सारा तो कॉन्सेप्ट समझाना भी पॉसिबल नहीं होगा, बट दिस इज हाउ यू शुड अंडरस्टैंड, राइट? ओके, सॉल्व दिस वन, क्वेश्चन नंबर 12. दिस इज अ क्रिटिकल रीजनिंग क्वेश्चन. सैफ, क्या कंफ्यूजिंग लग रहा है क्वेश्चन ये वाला जो दिखाया? इज दिस कंफ्यूजिंग, और यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द प्रीवियस क्वेश्चन? ओके, अभिषेक, सैफ, ओके, प्रीवियस क्वेश्चन, हाँ वो कंफ्यूजिंग रहता है. यू आर राइट सैफ, बिकॉज पंक्चुएशन के रूल्स आपको नहीं पता है, अगर है नहीं पता है देन इट विल लुक कंफ्यूजिंग, नो डाउट. एंड के बाद कभी कॉमा नहीं आएगा. एंड एज ए कंजंक्शन जब भी होता है ना सेंटेंस में, उसके पहले कॉमा आता है. एंड, बट, सिंस, खास करके जितने correlative conjunction से. So I'm not going to get into the details of that. अभी इतना आप समझ लो. और कोई नहीं, कोई सेंटे अगर कोई क्वेश्चन कंफ्यूजिंग लग रहा है तो आप छोड़ भी सकते हो, है ना? हाँ. अच्छा, by the way, I use Hindi in between, right? I use a mix of Hindi and English. If you're not comfortable with Hindi or anything, please let me know. मैं रिपीट कर दूंगा, है ना? बता देना मेरे को. Now, just look at the question, how easy it is to solve this question. Recent studies in behavioral psychology suggest that the way people make decisions is heavily influenced by their emotions and environmental factors rather than purely rational thought process. Finished. The first sentence has a very important point to make, and the remaining sentences explain that or extend the same and extend that idea. Okay, this implies that even when people believe that they are making logical choices, so this first sentence is important for us. Let's look at the question now. Which of the following can be best inferred from the paragraph above? People's decisions are mostly random and unpredictable. This is totally wrong. Emotional influences and environmental factors replace rational thinking. They replace rational thinking is totally false, right? Is influenced by their emotions, right? So this is also false and doesn't connect with what is written here. Rational thinking plays no significant role. This is also clearly eliminated. People's choices are often a mix of rational thought, emotions, and environment. This can be inferred, right? It's not the only inference that we can draw from the paragraph, but then this can be drawn based on the कंटेंट. भाई इंफरेंस का सीधा सा लॉजिक ये है कि जो भी इंफरेंस हम ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं उसका हमें करस्पॉन्डिंग कंटेंट पैराग्राफ में मिलना चाहिए, राइट? देयर मस्ट बी the corresponding content should be there in the paragraph. So are a mix of rational thought, emotions, and environmental influences. Yes, right? Because there is an influence of environmental factors and emotions. We can infer that people's choices are a mix of rational thought, emotions, and environmental influences. It's very clearly there, right? It's very clearly there. And therefore, this is the correct choice. The quality of a product is irrelevant. Again, it's totally irrelevant to the question, cannot be inferred at all. Correct choice D. Easy question to solve. Okay, so the question paper will give you opportunities to score good marks by giving you plenty of easy questions to solve. When I say plenty of, even 7 or 8 medium to easy questions can be of great help to you. Remember that. So now, are you all ready to solve an RC passage? Are you all ready to solve an RC passage? Okay. So read the passage carefully. Once you're done with this slide, reading this part of the slide or the RC passage, let me know in the chat box. I will change the slide. If you've read the paragraph, then let us start analyzing the questions. You've read the paragraph, let us solve and let us start analyzing the questions. Okay. What does the passage imply? It's very important for you. Again, um, as I told you in the beginning of the session, we're going to focus on the logic of elimination. Okay. So, first things first, you should read the question prompt very carefully. Huh? What does the passage imply? Sometimes when you don't read the question prompt carefully, you have a big risk of eliminating the right option or falling for the wrong option. Huh? Uh, imply about the relationship between language and morality in legal contexts. Okay, that is the question here. What does the passage imply about the relationship between language and morality in the legal context? Okay, let's go back to the passage. Okay, first option says, let's look at the first option now. Legal language is inherently moral and should be treated as such. Okay, now let's go back to the passage just to get a hang of what the passage is saying. In many First Nations of what we now call Australia, people have immense respect for the dead. Okay, fine. Manifesting is important. Manifesting linguistically in avoiding the names of the deceased. So this is some kind of moral commitment, it seems, right? Uh, this manifestation is some kind of moral commitment. Okay, that is the kind of reflection coming up. This practice, interesting to historical linguists, affects language evolution and complicates tracing language ancestries. Obviously, when they skip the names of the deceased, for historians it's going to become difficult. This cultural practice is seemingly unrelated to legal citations, yet, yet, this contrast is important. It introduces a discussion about the Blue Book slave case. Okay. So although it's not directly related to uh, the legal citations, but then in a way it is also related to legal citations, and the whole passage is about that in a way, like how it is related to legal citations and how this whole cultural idea of morality is related to this slave case. Okay, let's see. In March, Professor XYZ published an article on Blue Book, the slave case rule, which requires specific parentheticals for cases involving enslaved persons. This rule, under debate, was suggested by Professor Justin Simrod in a Stanford Law Review article, arguing that courts often cite slave cases without acknowledging their outdated legal status. So, courts do not acknowledge their outdated status and then simply refer to such cases. So just like the manifestation that was talked about in the beginning of the passage, this has a moral implication. That's the whole idea here. Such citations have a moral implication. That's the whole idea here, right? So we sort of understand, get a hang of the drift of the passage. Okay, थोड़ा समझ आ जाता है पैसेज अपने को यहाँ पे. हाँ? यार ये जो कनेक्शन है साइटेशंस का, वो एक उसका एक मॉरल पर्सपेक्टिव है ना. दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट. द रूल स्पार्क्ड डिसेंट. डिसेंट मींस disagreement. So he criticized it as legally misleading and morally misguided. Okay, so that's the idea. Zip suggested relocating the rule from the blue. So this person suggested relocating it from this to Blue Book's white pages meant for scholars, right, to its pages for courts and practitioners. So the context is different. Why not shift it to a new location or a page? That's the idea. So it fits court usage better than academic writing. Simple. Okay. So the last sentence is important for us. The debate over the slave case rule in Blue Book reflects ongoing discussions about language, morality, and the law's role in society. So basically, it's a combination of these three. By and large, it hinges on morality, basically. Okay. Now the question, what does the passage imply about the relationship between language and morality in legal context? Okay. Legal language is inherently moral and should be treated as such, right? Does it say it is inherently moral? Legal language is inherently moral. This itself is a false statement. Yes or no? The passage does not say legal language is inherently moral. That's the issue here, right? Legal language is being put to question. So it's not inherently moral. This can be easily eliminated. Okay. So that's not something that brings up the relationship between language and morality. The morality of legal language depends on the context and historical background. Is it there? It's very clearly there, right? That's the main idea here, right? So all in all, if you look at the first paragraph, okay, so yes, in a way, uh, it depends on. So yes, the morality of legal language. Huh? Uh, what does it depend on? It depends upon the historical background. It depends upon the context. It's there in the first and that's the main idea here, right? So uh, here this practice interesting to historical linguists affects language evolution and complicates tracing language slave cases. So basically, if you look at it, language and morality, the connection, uh, it depends upon the cultural context. It depends upon the historical background. Okay. So that is how morality comes into picture. This can be the correct option. So let's put a question mark here. Language in legal context is amoral and should be strictly objective. Objective is wrong. It does not say language in legal context should be objective. It is not immoral. In fact, it is rooted in morality. How easy it is to eliminate this option. This option is also surely gone. C is eliminated. The moral implications of legal language are less important. All this is not there in the passage. How easy it is to eliminate this option. Legal language, like any other, is subject to moral interpretations based on societal norms. Is it based on societal norms or it depends on context and historical background? From the first 5 lines of the passage, you can easily make out it depends on context and historical background, not on societal norms. This is wrong. Correct answer, therefore, is B. That is how you eliminate and select. I hope it's very clear to you. Let's look at the next question now. According to the passage, what is the primary controversy surrounding the Blue Book slave case? So here again, if you look at the question stem, primary controversy, right? It's about primary controversy. Okay, fine. So you're just going to focus on that when you evaluate the options. Options को eliminate करते समय, you're going to focus on primary controversy. Okay. So whether legal citation should reflect historical context. Okay. Is this the primary controversy? Think about it. Huh? Legal citations should reflect historical context. Is this the primary controversy? No, no, no. It is related to morality. 100%. Yes, sir. It is related to morality. Legal accuracy, gone. Not related to morality. Moral obligation to acknowledge slavery in legal citations. Yes, moral obligation is the main point here. Huh? This is the primary. In the slave cases, there is a moral obligation. It's an impending moral obligation. In fact, it's very clearly there. If I take you back to the passage, huh? It says it's cited as legally misleading and morally misguided. This is the point at issue. This is the point, right? And therefore, um, moral obligation, yes, this should be the correct answer. The appropriateness of amending citations, it's not there. The potential for legal misinterpretation, no. Basically, the moral obligation is the point that is the root of the controversy, right? Not any other thing. Other options, as you could see, can be very easily eliminated based on this benchmark of moral obligation. Correct? Point made. The correct answer is option C. What conclusion can be drawn about? Again, this word conclusion is important for us. Can be drawn about the debate over relocating the slave case rule in the Blue Book. Okay, now it is a straightforward decision with clear legal. It doesn't say it's a straightforward decision. If you remember what we discussed in the passage, you can eliminate this option even without going back to the passage, right? आसान है इसको एलिमिनेट करना साफ ही बता स्ट्रेट कहाँ बोल रहा है ऑथर इट्स ए स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड डिसीजन doesn't say this. It reflects broader societal discussions about how history is acknowledged in law. Yes, it reflects. Look at the words. Huh? Broader, what does it reflect? Broader societal discussions about how history is acknowledged in law. Okay. Yes, in a way, yes. Debate over relocating the what's a debate, right? Instead, it's a court. It suits the court proceedings. It does not suit um, the societal framework. बात तो वो हो रही है ना? So when it comes to the moral framework, it's not suitable. That's the point being emphasized here. So yes, how history is acknowledged in law, how it is acknowledged has moral implications. Huh? Yes, this can be the correct answer. It is solely it is solely based on the practicality of legal citations. This itself is enough to eliminate the options, right? Whatever takes you away from the moral aspect and how it is projected or portrayed in the legal citation doesn't make sense, right? So broader social discussions and that too moral in nature. It centers on the legal effectiveness of such rules. Doesn't talk about effectiveness. It is an unnecessary debate, totally wrong. Correct? So, see, what I'm coming to is like, it is not very difficult to pinpointedly say that these are the reasons for the options to be wrong. Yes? And in many cases, you can find evident reasons for why an option is wrong. And that is how the option of the reasoning behind elimination works. Look for problem statements. Look for what is wrong in the sentence. For example, here straightforward, unnecessary. A and C gone, solely based on practicality. So A, C, and D, you can eliminate in one shot. Then you end up comparing B and D. Right? Legal effectiveness versus reflects broader social discussions. Evidently, B is the correct answer based on our understanding of the passage. Right? So I'm sure in this last lap of revision session, you have moved one step closer to taking the exam. In fact, you have moved many steps closer to taking the exam. Okay, you're seasoned, conditioned, and your preparation is fine-tuned, I'm sure. So um, I'm Ganeshan, um, who took you through this session. Okay, so any I mean, all that I can say now is like wish you all the best. Do well in the exam that is scheduled to happen on 4th of January. Okay. Any backlogs that you have about cat in your mind, just scrap it off. है ना? कुछ भी अगर कैट के बारे में दिमाग में चल रहा है, राइट, एक पेपर उठाओ, पेपर पे लिखो और उस पेपर को फाड़ के फेंक दो. जैट पे फोकस करो. इट्स ए हाईली रिवार्डिंग एग्जामिनेशन. आई विश यू ऑल द बेस्ट. हैव अ नाइस डे. बाय बाय.